to be honest, I fell into this whole coaching thing by accident. And like, I honestly mean that. I operated 2 gyms in North Carolina, which was a fantastic experience. And we sold those right before the pandemic. And that was kind of interesting because if I knew if I knew we were that good at forecasting, I probably would go to Vegas and win lots of money. But anywho, oh man. So obviously had some experience and, but I didn't go to school for it or anything like that. I just, after the fact, got all the certifications and, studied. And really it just was a matter of like, I was obsessed with watching YouTube videos and I'm sure every guy has been on this website, T Nation, right? And I would just take it in, man. And just really obsessed with that type of stuff. So that's how I really learned through the certs and then through self-teaching and then obviously through doing, right? Through practicing. So from there, fast forward a few years, I meet this girl named Ashley. She's a really good CrossFitter, yet she has no direction in her life. I explain Ashley as the bowling ball, the like the bowling ball that is just tumbling down the lane with no direction into the gutter, into the other lane. But she's got raw talent. She's got sick raw talent. She's got a physical build. There's things that are happening for her. She's got a background in D1 sports, specifically as a heptathlete. And I'm like, And so she starts coaching, or she starts as an athlete with Elle, and she gets hurt. It wasn't Elle's fault. It wasn't really her fault. I mean, she did a competition and blew her back out. It was one of those. And long story short, that's how I got into coaching. Was once that happened, she obviously stopped doing really competitive CrossFit, and so I helped her rehab. And then when she got back and good enough, I was like, well, let's try this whole coaching thing. And so all the ideas, the really bad ideas I had in my head, and I don't mean bad ideas as they're not principally sound principles. I just mean like all the things I've always wanted to try on people, I finally got to try on people. And that was her. Go. And then she does pretty well. She gets 250th in quarters last year. Obviously trying to make it this year. I think she can. We've improved tremendously. And so we'll see if my coaching's any good. In the meantime, because she's so damn good, other clients have come along, and it's been fun, man. I kind of like you, as I started to listen to some of the podcasts that you've done, it sounds like that's maybe not CrossFit coaching, but just coaching in general. Helping people get from here to there is how I would call coaching, or what I would call coaching. So it's cool, and I don't know why some people are like that and why some people aren't, but it's cool to hear that. I think you and I share that value.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, I find a lot of happiness in seeing people accomplish their goals that they have, whatever it is, and I think learning from my own self, I hold. You just said all the things I thought about doing that I haven't really got to try yet. I was teaching high school in from 2013 to 2019, and was teaching kids that were basically at risk to drop out. That was the group of kids that I had, and we'd done a pretty good job trying to help them to understand other options. But in doing that, I was talking so much about, finding your passion, following a dream, because these kids aren't going to check boxes for you just to check boxes. They need to find some real connection to what they're doing. And I decided I needed to get out of teaching, go out and try and start those things that I wanted to do, I thought about doing, and still coaching people and interacting with people that now aren't forced to be in my classroom. That was a big thing. I enjoyed the classroom setting so much. Now, my fear was, what were people going to do when they didn't have to sit in my class and listen to me? Would they value what I had to bring to the table? So it's been a fun journey the last 3 years for sure. As you know, like someone's placement in the open or something like that is, while super valuable, is not like why we're coaching, and
Hmm.
there's other valuable stuff you bring to the table other than that. So I'm excited for you. I think it's cool you're doing that with Elle, and Elle's a great guy to learn from for sure.
He's phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about him, and he's like a best kept secret too. I mean, obviously now he's got some big time athletes, um, and he's had big time athletes. It's now that they're just becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, well, that and he's quiet about it. So
I I love this. It says the purpose of a coach telling a person, excuse me, coaching is telling a person what they don't want to hear, helping them see what they didn't want to see, so that they could be the person they always believed they could be. I really, when I hear you talk, and when I've listened to the podcast that you've done, that's what I get from that. You're a person, from my point of view, where I sit, as someone that wants to do that. Like you're on your own journey, and I know, feel confident we're going to get into that. But
yeah.
that's really what I see and I hear and I feel from you is that quote right there of like, if I could sum you up, it's like that's what you help people do. I mean, do you think that that's an accurate depiction?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I love that quote. I don't think I've ever heard it before. I'd love it if you'd send it to me. Yeah, I have always thought that if I wasn't helping people be better from the interactions with me, then I'm
Mm,
not doing my job. That's something I have to really credit my parents. My parents were
mm,
just taught me how to I hopefully treat people as well as possible, and I'm really grateful for that. Super grateful for that, and they luckily I was able to learn that through sport as well. That being the main thing
mm,
growing up in five team sports, but yeah, I just don't understand why. In our interactions with people, we would do anything other than try and build them up.
mm,
Yeah, I don't get it, and maybe that's even in my own head. Like I've had people ask me lately, like, "You're so positive," or and it's like maybe just because in my own head I just know how negative I am on everything that I want to do or am doing or I'm not doing, and I want to be built up, and so I'm just trying to be selfish, and it's just trying to be selfish and be around people who
mm.
build me up and that I'm able to build up. So it is super gratifying to work with other people that are like-minded. They want to build everybody up. Everything that they're doing is a part of the process to live a better life and to be happy. And so, um, yeah, I think it's just a great opportunity to be here on this podcast. Brute Strength has been a huge reason for that. I found Brute back in 2000 and I guess 17.
Mm.
Well, even before that, because I knew Mike Casu. He was my assistant strength coach in college, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been following him the whole time. And then as I got into CrossFit in 2014, in terms of going to a gym, I'd
Mm,
been doing it before. I just hadn't gone to a gym. And then after a couple of years of that and seeing what they were doing in the competitive space, it was a no brainer to try and get involved. And again, from the mindset and the teachings, focusing on mindset, focusing on breathing, focusing on the process, all of those things really ring true to me because I never scored a touchdown in sports. I was never in the paper, anything like that, but I played in college and did all those things. And so it was it was always about the process because if I was judging myself on the outcome, right, I'm just a random guy. So weight room, treating people right, that's always been a part of the equation for me.
yeah, and I have to wonder how much of that is something that is caught or something that is taught, something that is caught or something that is taught. And you mentioned your parents, and one of the things that I underlined, highlighted, because I was like, I gotta ask about this, is what was it like growing up with five brothers and sisters? You're one of six, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm the youngest of six, and I have five older brothers and sisters.
That's
My
insane.
oldest my oldest brother is 18 years older than me, 15 or 18. He's 47. I'm 33. So yeah, so 15. Uh, my my next oldest brother is 5 years older than me, and then I've got two other brothers and one sister. Growing up, did I get bullied? Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any more than the normal, no complaints, not being the victim here.
Yeah, I get it.
My brothers and sisters were far enough ahead of me that there was no competition between them really.
Mm.
And maybe other than I got more freedom because I'm the youngest of six, parenting changes from top to bottom, right? So I had more freedoms than everybody else got. I looked up to my older brothers and siblings. They helped shape me a lot. Basketball, football, music, lots of things. So really enjoyed it. It is part of what has brought to pass the Iron Games. What I mean by that is being the youngest of six, I kind of missed out on, the family always being together and like playing sports in the backyard with my brothers. I did that with my friends, but I didn't really get to do it as much with my brothers. So when my family would come together, it was always a big, happy thing for me because I got to see my whole family, right? Sunday dinners, whatever it might be. So with the Iron Games, that's kind of the same concept. My family grew up. We had a 2-acre lot where we held weddings and receptions and parties and big 4th of July get together for the whole neighborhood every year. That was like a 60-year tradition in my family. So I didn't realize it, but the Iron Games has become that same thing for me. It's a reunion. It's building the biggest house that we possibly can for everybody to come and live in and have positivity and change their life. And so that's what the Iron Games has become for me. And I'm pretty grateful to just, again, how I was raised, being the youngest of six. Getting together was always valuable. Interacting with people, trying to understand what they've been doing the last year, and then because you're only seeing them once a year, and just the serving other people. Like you wanted people to leave your house after this 4th of July party or this wedding or this reception with the greatest experience that they could have. And so just try to do the same thing with the Iron Games. And I'm super fortunate that there's a lot of people that are interested in doing the same thing. Volunteers, staff, athletes. Nothing can happen without everybody being involved. Super blessed to the community of the Iron Games and to the staff. My boss, Pace Clark, with the Summer Games and with Southern Utah University. So the Iron Games is under the Utah Summer Games. The Utah Summer Games is a nonprofit organization that runs 40 to 50 sporting events throughout the year.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they did that many.
Yeah, so I'm the assistant director. My boss, Pace Clark, he's the director. So we manage and logistically run these 40 to 50 events all year long. It's been going for 35 years. So the Iron Games has just been the last 4 years. And so really excited to, to keep growing it and to see where it goes in 35 years.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't realize that about the Utah Summer Games. I didn't realize it'd been around that long.
It's exciting just because, you can kind of see what something can become 35 years down the road. Even with Wadapalooza, right? You look at Wadapalooza 10 years down the road, and we're, not that we're going to be Wadapalooza, we're going to be our own version of being our own best event, whatever that is. But yeah, it's exciting and it's motivating to see other people paving the way for you.
Yeah, I want to get back to the Iron Games, and I know that's one of the purposes that we're on today, and I certainly want to get to that. So I promise that we'll get to that. But I want to ask a few more questions that I'm personally interested in first, which is, I think about growing up, and I've got a younger sister and a younger brother, so I'm the oldest of three, so nothing like six, certainly, and we're 2 years apart, or 2.5 roughly, 2 years apart. So there was a lot of similar things going on in our lives. There were, the stages of our lives have been, for the most part, very similar. And I even used that quote as I asked about your childhood. I said, I believe more is caught than taught. And often, at least from how I grew up, like I caught all my bad habits from the people that I hung out with. 100%. Like I didn't conjure them up on my own. Like it was like you're with these people and vice versa. I think a lot of the great work ethic like I caught from seeing my parents, right? So I'm wondering how much of like not having brothers and sisters that were at, we'll call it a playable age, right? And
Yeah.
because there's I'm very interested in this. There's a lot of psychology behind this of like how much playtime do kids actually need? Like kids are generally more like amicable, that are able to have playtime with other kids. Like I know this is a weird question, but like what was that like? Because you had a brother that was 15, 16, 17, 18 years older. It's like you guys have nothing in common when you're 5 years old. You have zero in common
Right.
other than you're both male. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How did that work?
Yeah. So that's been interesting. Uh, my oldest brother actually has just found out he has cancer.
Holy shit. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my
So that's
God.
a great question right now for me because the last like 6 months I've been trying to get to know my older brother,
Holy
and we
shit.
don't we don't have a ton of common. And I think that in the past that's been like embarrassing to admit, or like I feel bad about it. Whereas now I'm just trying to. That's okay. Again, we're 15 years old. He was never in the house when I was growing up. But there's different things, right? I guess my family, we always had to work. We always had to work. So I
Mm.
get done with basketball camp or football practice in the summer or anything like that. A lot of my friends would go go home or go to the country club, and swim, do whatever. I would go home and work in the yard. And again, like I never had a job growing up because my work was again in the yard.
Mm.
I'd get an allowance, a small allowance, but it was all about outdoor landscaping work to make this place ready to go. And so, in terms of being caught or taught with those things, uh, I learned how to work, from my dad, from my brothers. They did show me that, right?
Mm.
Because even on Saturdays, people would come back to the house and we'd all like work in the yard together.
Mm.
They would always show up, to volunteer their time when the actual events came around. It was a joke of like, okay, we're doing this again, and our family's going to volunteer all of our time for the church or whatever it was to put on this event. And so I learned serving and giving, and I learned all that from my parents and from my older brothers, and them doing it, whether they wanted to or not. They
Mm.
knew that there were things that my parents were important to them, and they always strive to follow through or come through on that. I learned the weight room, working in the weight room from my friends for sure. So I had a great group of friends in regards to competing in
Mm.
sports and competing in the weight room. That's where I learned that. I didn't. My family didn't really have a background in fitness,
Mm.
or health and wellness. One side in sports, again in sports, but back in the early '90s, your mother was afraid to let you have protein supplements. So a lot has changed since then, and I am super grateful to sports, to my high school coaches, to my friends for that habits that we created in terms of the weight room, that have brought a lot of happiness into my life for sure.
How how does one how does one get to know someone that you have such a vast age difference? Um, Yet you're from the same mom and dad, right?
Yeah,
Your brother.
yeah.
Okay. Um, how do you get to know someone? I mean, I like it's, and I know people listening probably like, is he really asking this question? Like, yeah, I'm really freaking asking this question because here's the deal: when you meet someone at a bar or at a church or at a gym or at a whatever, there's no, and like I want to set this up. There's no expectation. There's no predisposition. There's no
There's no judgment.
The, great word. There's no past. There's
So
literally, it's a blank slate. So, but when you do have, someone like it's different, and then you layer on top of that like what's going on, context. It's like, well, now it's really different. Like how, where did
yeah,
I mean, this is tough. I mean, where do you start?
yeah. So with my brother specifically, I mean, I'll use it as an example. All right. So you grew up in the South, right?
Alabama, you got it.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm sure that I won't assume what I think I know about there, but I'll there's culture here in Utah, right?
Of course,
Uh, Around religion, there's culture anywhere you go,
of
right?
course.
So, I think the greatest way to get to know people is to ask questions and to have a genuine interest in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, Something I guess I was maybe taught from a young age was I was just always around older people, so can ask questions. They know a lot more than me. One thing I've been, I guess, learning more, brew mindset, just CrossFit or just, as the world changes in general is how valuable it is to have, to set expectations within a conversation or to set
Mm.
expectations within a relationship from the get go. So I've been having some conversations with my brother recently, and um, there are conversations that we've had before where maybe he would think that I'd have an agenda to like say, hey, you need to stop doing X, Y, and Z because you'd be a better person if you do this, right?
Mm.
And I just really try to, from the beginning, hey, like, I'm trying to get to know. So I've been asking him, like, what are your feelings on religion? What are your feelings on God? You know, um, I'm looking 15 years ahead, and I'm just like, okay, here's where his life is at. He's a great guy. He has so much kindness and love, and all these different qualities that he cares about other people. That are good things. But of course, I don't want to have cancer when I'm 47, and so anyways, asking him all these questions and trying to get to know him, yeah, there's just a couple of times where I have to be very clear that, like, hey, I'm asking you these questions because I want to get to know you.
Mm.
So I'll ask the question, there's silence, or before I ask the question, I'm like, hey, I'm asking you this because I want to get to know you. I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. Just like, I don't know you.
Mm.
And so I think,
Mm.
so maybe in conversations with other people, right, it's like, if you try and be open and into who you are as a person, then it can come off more genuine, right? Like if that's something you naturally do. Yeah, I just try and take a genuine interest in other people
Mm.
as much as possible and then follow up questions, right? So if you tell me this news and I ignore it or I one up you or I downplay it, then you are disinterested in continuing that conversation with me. If you bring up something and I celebrate it, acknowledge it, ask a follow up question, you're assuming that I'm open to the conversation, that I'm willing to um, hear what your perception is, hear what your beliefs are, what your values are, and I genuinely am trying to learn. And so, so that's something that's been big for me. I learned that from Justin Sua, and I found him through Brew, and he's been fantastic, a great mentor. But yeah, genuine list. There's all these listening cues, right? Even me looking down and starting to play with my fingernails is hypothetically a cue that you take and say, oh, he's not interested, right? So it's remembering those kinds of things, I guess. And I think history, right? Like the more we learn about
Mm.
things before us, things after us, the more we can have a conversation with someone. So even like me getting on this podcast with you, right? Like, okay, I remember that L told me that he was, apprenticing with him. I think Landon Shoemaker is his brother. Like, Okay, so and just try and find some things where I could, return the conversation to you and ask things that are going on in your life,
Mm.
uh, rather than just talk about me.
This podcast has been, to your point, this podcast has been a great lesson in listening.
Yeah.
It has. I'm so freaking lucky that Matt Bruce let me do this. I
Right. Yeah.
I pinch myself every day getting to talk to some of the most dope ass people ever, including
Right.
yourself. And
Thank you.
yeah, man, I'm so freaking lucky I get to do this. And I mean, like, I don't, there is no agenda. There is no, hey guys, like you need to talk to this, or hey Micah, you need to talk to this person, or you need to, there is none of that. It's like whoever you want to talk to. And that's how I've done the podcast thus far. It's like, if I think you're interesting, I don't care how many followers you have. I'll have you on. And
Yeah.
let's talk. I value interesting conversations over how many followers you have or how much exposure. Now, don't get me wrong. Like
Right.
Danielle Brandon has a shit ton of followers, also had her on, and to this date is one of my favorite conversations
Yep.
because I think she is a rad person. She's so awesome to talk to, and she's super sweet. And it was a pleasure having her on. But I don't care if you have 14 million or 1,400 followers. Like that, it doesn't matter to me. I think it's an act of engaging in conversation that is meaningful. Whereas, and I don't know how much you followed the whole Joe Rogan debacle right now.
I'm aware of some basics. I think I'm not following.
Gotcha. So, and you'll see where I'm going with this here in a second. So, Joe talks about this all the time, right? He started out talking with his buddies and it became something. He didn't start out talking to Kanye West. Okay.
Right.
That came over time, over 12, 13, 14 years of just being consistent. And I think we can all learn something from that. Consistency is underrated, people. You want to get strong as an ox? Consistently strength train.
Right.
Real simple. But you got to do it not for months, years. You want to get really good at listening? Have a lot of different people on and talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah. In your case, right? Like you got to listen because what does the person want to talk about when they come on? It's kind of like you're creating them to speak. The listeners want to hear what they have to say, right? You're just trying to provide value as much as possible, right? And
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I won't get into the politics of the whole deal with Joe Rogan because I don't really care about that part of it. But you see now what a platform will really do and how much you really can impact people. And I think for a lot of us, including myself, we're very focused on the metrics. We're very focused on how many listens, how many followers do we have, how many people are we reaching, what is the numbers? And I think and I literally having this conversation last night with a guy. I said, and I think I heard it from Gary Vee, which I know you're a big fan, and I would love to get into. You have explained NFTs to me, and this is going to be fun.
Sure.
But yeah. So just pause on that. Don't get too excited. I just 1 second. The one thing that I so appreciate from Gary Vee is this quote right here, which is, and I, paraphrasing, but most of us are concerned about the number of Instagram followers that we have. Yet what we really need to be concerned about,
how many people will show up to our funeral,
is the number of people at attendance at our funeral. Yeah, it's good shit, man. And that's dude, and that's something that I think about more often than not. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm so happy this podcast has grown. It's amazing. Like, it's crazy. We literally went once there was no Brute, there's Brute podcast. Then for 6, 7, 8 months, there was no Brute podcast. And we literally started over from scratch. There was no leftover subscribers. There was no cookie crumbs. It was, hey, I think we should start from scratch. Let's redo the whole thing. Like, there were thousands, tens of thousands of followers and subscribers that Brute had. And I said, like, just so everyone listening can go, oh, this guy really, is walking what he's talking. Like, I literally said, let's start over. Let's do it all, because that's not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is building the brand, and the brand is meaningful conversations around CrossFit. I mean, that is what we do. We're a CrossFit company, It's centered around this thing called CrossFit, right? And so let's give the athletes, let's give the event organizers, let's give the coaches a platform to speak on whatever it is they want to speak about. And if that's interesting, it will grow. If it's not interesting, it won't grow. And it's that simple. Yet, that's not where my concern is. My concern is am I making an impact? And my thoughts on impact are very simple. My thoughts on legacy are very simple. Most of us go around are more concerned with the breadth of our impact than the depth of our impact. And if a relationship is shallow, it will end shallow.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll leave it.
I like what you said on the shallow. If a relationship is shallow. I've never heard that before.
I totally made it up.
That's good. I like it. Actually speaks to some relationships right now, but yeah, I am super interested in how many people are going to show up at the funeral, and that's interesting because actually before I ever found Gary Vee, that was like something I would talk about, and my old gym owner that I was like working with, I was the head coach and managing the gym at the time. I was having it was specific to training. So I'd go into the gym, right, and I'd try and do my own training for competitive stuff with Brute, the stuff I'm doing. But then also, like, members will try and talk to you while you're working out and all these different things like that, right?
I get it. I've been there.
I have 2 hours to get my workout in before I go teach school and then coach football practice after that. And then I'll try and finish, after football practice before I go home to my wife. And so you're always like in that situation, you're always looking at your time. And I was at the time frustrated with, me letting people steal my time. And I remember the owner said something to me to the concept of like, you should stop worrying about what people think of you and how many people are going to show up at your funeral, because I had told him that before, and start doing what you need to do, kind of a thing. And I think that there's truth to that, or there's value to what he was saying to me based off of who I naturally am. But also it's been really cool in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years since that has happened to also be self-aware and say, this is who I am. And I do care that much about that. And so that helps guide me a lot, in terms of the depth of relationships. And I met with a guy last night that's just traveling through Cedar City from California, and just someone I know from Twitter. That's the only way I know him. And we've met a couple times now as he's passing by, and we just talk when he comes through, and that's it, and I'm grateful to be someone that he wants to spend his time with and sees value in spending that time with me. And he's helping me, and hopefully I'm helping him.
You said something to the extent of, when you were having that conversation with your gym owner, you said something to the extent of like, who I naturally am. What does that mean?
Well, I think that for me, I've been trying to just be more self-aware. Self-awareness has been a big thing. I write it down every day. And I'm trying to be more self-aware of who I naturally am as a person, and stop forcing myself to to be someone that I'm not.
Mm.
Forcing myself to do things that other people or that I see as other people doing that makes them successful, or what people value as success, and just always trying to look back inwards and say, hey, who are you? Um, yeah, I mean, I I have a hard time not trying to care about who I'm interacting with, what's going on in their life, and if I can give any input or value to that. Um, some people don't like that. Some people don't want to be coached, or some people don't want to feel like you're in their business, and so. Um, but that's kind of who I am, and so part of the whole like setting boundaries from the start of a conversation is trying to figure out if somebody's open to
Mm.
that kind of a relationship, and if they're not, then then you move on. But I'm not going to feel bad about it, or even feel bad about offending someone, when I was trying to help. That can be hard sometimes, right? Like, I'm
Mm.
a people pleaser. I know I'm a people pleaser. I know I'm even too much of a people pleaser. So I'm trying to be self-aware in how do I get my fill of like people pleasing, right? But then also not let it on the dark side hold me back from, everything that has to be done, or saying no sometimes.
That's tough, right? Because I struggle with the same. And what I find in my own life is I tend to um and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is really an interesting thought. I tend to play on the extremes. I have a hard time being in the middle on things. What I mean by that is, I'll give an example. When I am all into something, I'm all into something. You don't have to worry about it. Like, I'm a dangerous person. Like, if I decide I like you, we're good. If I
Yeah,
decide I don't like you, it's not good. You know? Like
yeah,
I'm just like, like I'm your best friend, or I'm your biggest pain in your ass. Like,
yeah.
and I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying I've noticed that about myself.
Aware of it.
Yeah, I'm just aware. Exactly. And it's important. I think it's important to be aware. So as you started to talk, I was thinking, man, like, that's really interesting. I relate to that. And I don't think it's wrong. Like, I don't know. Maybe it is. But, I think about it in the terms of sport a lot too. It's like you kind of have to be extreme. Like, if you want to be good, you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sport
Yeah,
is different than life. And I was having that conversation too last night. It's totally different.
it's super different. So yeah, so like in your journey, even as a coach, right? Some I could be wrong here. Maybe you're experienced it already, but something you would want to look into is your self awareness on how do you react when athletes don't communicate with you.
Yeah.
You're on them, right? If you're all in on them and trying to help them, and you're getting their programming in every day, and maybe you're even reaching out, but like they as a person just don't communicate back in that way.
Yeah.
How are you going to? Are you going to take it personally, or you're not going to take it personally? And I'm speaking from my own experience too, right? Of like, sometimes getting no feedback on the end of coaching is like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And then so that's interesting in regards to like, if you know that about yourself as a person, how do you
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you use it to help you, right? Like,
Mm.
use it to navigate and know when, like, hey, this is a waste of my time, or this isn't worth my time, or the time of the Brute Strength podcast in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
priorities that I have, or my coaching development. But then also, you know, you can't, you're gonna have to work with clients potentially, right? That you're gonna struggle with, or maybe aren't the best personal relationship, or the way they communicate, or the way they put notes in, whatever it might be. And then knowing, okay, where am I like introducing my own issues into the way I feel about this
Mm-hmm.
situation? Where am I not?
Mm. And as someone that's married, both of us are,
Yeah,
that comes up probably the most and rears its ugly head the most when it comes to
yeah,
marriage.
yeah. How long have you been married for?
A year.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You just got married. That's
He's like, sucker.
crazy. Um, yeah, so I've been married for 12 years, and
How old are you again?
I'm 33.
Dude, that's it. So you got married early,
Got married
early.
early on.
Wow.
So I
Good,
don't
good for you, man. Congrats. That's seriously though. Before we go on,
envy
that's awesome.
all in regards to the work that I feel like it's taken us to get here. But I will also, um, okay, so it hasn't, yeah, it just hasn't been easy. I love
Mm,
my wife. We've become best friends. We've almost lived now together for 15 years or known each other for 15 years.
wow.
And so it's like half your life. And like, man, you just can't imagine, it not being that way now. But this last year we went through the hardest things we've ever went through together. So, and that made us stronger. But it could have not. So, 12 years in, it's not easy. It's not always easy. It's not always good. There's lots of growth. And
Mm,
the biggest thing I can say is that the more we have chosen to accept who each other wants to be and allow each other that space to be that, uh, the, the more, I mean, think about your best friend, right? Your best friend isn't perfect.
right.
Your best friend makes mistakes. They get on your nerves. They bother you. But then you see them the next day in class, and they're still your best friend, right? So
Great
that's
analogy.
that's kind of what it's become. And so remembering that rather than thinking like, oh, after 15 years, like you should just not get up. Like you should know that and not do that to me. Well, it's kind of the opposite, right? Like it's 15 years, and I know this about you. And so now I'm gonna, you know, annoy you or get on your nerves because I did it last. I did it last night. We were making cookies and I was playing around and I took it too far and hit the cookie out of her hands and she was mad about it. Like it was just I took it too far and I was being a jerk. Now that I look back on it, anyways, so admitting that, um, you know, I wouldn't have the first year.
Mm.
It's not that big a deal. And now today we're in a better place than we would have been had I had an ego about it.
People change. People evolve. You and it's look, you hear all these quotes, right? If you're not here's one of my favorite ones. If you ain't growing, you're dying. Some stuff like that. I don't know why I always use that Alabama accent, but I always do. I always do when I'm getting intense on stuff like this. But I think that is, we have all these sayings, right? We have all these analogies that very driven, motivated people use. Okay, hustle hard. If you ain't growing, you're dying. Sleep when you're dead. We could keep going, and we would name a bunch of them, right? And there's been this, at least I perceive it, at least in our space, and our space I'm calling the CrossFit space, the self-improvement space, the DIY. I'm going to make a self-made man, make a self-made woman. I call it the DIY space.
Yeah.
And I don't mean Home Depot, okay? Because I can't cut a 2x4. Anyways, have a butter knife, try to cut that thing. Anywho, all right, moving on. So we have all these sayings, we have all these things, we have all these analogies that we use, and I think we've skewed too far the other direction. Whereas we don't give people space to actually go through mess and evolve. Because guess what? Change is messy. We don't give people the opportunity to understand how to balance their schedule because hustling is hard. We tend to be this is me in a nutshell. We are very impatient when people don't want to work as hard as we do. even pushy. And
Yeah.
I think that's such an interesting thing in marriage. And not just marriage. I think this involves, I mean, marriage is like is often that thing
Yeah.
that brings out some of our best and ironically worst qualities. Speak from experience there. And what I find to be so interesting is this dichotomy that really exists in relationships. And that dichotomy being, while we're constantly growing, we're constantly failing. While we're constantly trying to become enough, we are forever not enough. Right? And the thing that we are aiming at is always more desirable than the place that we are, that the state that we're in. The state that we want to achieve is always more desirable than the state that we're in. And so there's this dichotomy that exists of, again, of forever being not enough, yet always wanting to be enough. And you could take this analogy that we're laying out here, and you could use it for CrossFit, you could use it for relationships, you could use it for, I don't really care, it doesn't really matter because it applies. And speaking from my own experience, it's been such a fun, and I use that word very intentionally, a fun journey, because as someone that is married yet also coaches my wife, those are two different roles.
Very two different roles.
And they require and hear me out. They require two different people. They are not the same person. How you love someone cannot be how you coach them. And certainly how you coach them cannot be how you love them, No.
Congratulations to you in that. So in coaching and coaching your wife, that's something her and I haven't been able to figure that out on a one-on-one coaching basis. When I've been coaching in the gym and she comes into the gym class workouts like that, that's never been an issue. But we've tried some of the one-on-one coaching and it just hasn't really taken for whatever reason. So yeah, and I think there's been times too where like I was offended by that or that hurt my feelings, and over time you learn that just like anyone, not everyone is your client, and you are not everybody's coach. And
that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. Okay. So what I really have found though in terms of like relationships, and especially marriage, is she's a completely different person and I'm a completely different person from when we were 21. And I think that this is something that's really important for life overall. Even talking about when you have the conversations with people, with we were talking about with older siblings or just with people in general. The less we are married to the romantic ideology or the romantic vision of what we think is happiness or what people should be doing, I think the more open and accepting we become to wherever people are at, right? So I think that's come up. I think if you've been in personal development, if you've been in mindset and all of these things, like you're learning about that. But yeah, in terms of the iron games or my own life or our marriage and relationship or just what I expect from other people, whether I should have expectations of them or not, based off my interactions with them, work, whatever it might be, the less I am attached to the romantic idea of what I thought it was going to be, and the more I can be adaptable and understand what the actual reality is, then you can move a lot faster.
Yet we all have these expectations, Expectations are like assholes. Everybody's got them. You know what I'm saying? And that's just look, and I've been, God, and I feel like I was telling someone last night, I feel like my life is Groundhog's Day in a certain way. I feel like I have the same conversations over and over and over. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, yet I can tell by what types of conversations I'm having is what is on my mind, right?
Right.
Like my words are a reflection of what is up here, you know, and so I try to choose them as carefully as I can because gosh, I don't know if this is Jordan Peterson or what, but you know, words are a weapon, and it's so accurate.
Yeah.
Words are a weapon, and they can be used to wield kingdoms, and they can be used to wield destruction, and it's very important. And I think about that a lot. And gosh, it sucks that sometimes the people we love the most, we are the most lackadaisical with our words.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about we were originally talking about, you know, the funeral, and then, you know, how many people will come to that, and then how do you practice having, you know, these conversations with people. I think it's just huge. I think it's huge to practice some sort of reflection and gratitude
Mm.
every single. Um, it really allows you to say, "Hey, remember when you wanted to be right here in this moment with the podcast?
Mm.
Like, this is where you wanted to be. This is what you were thinking about.
Mm.
Well, we're here, so let's clap it up. You know, like let's have some gratitude for
Mm.
it, and then yeah, let's make the next goal, or let's move on." And it's such a it can be a vicious cycle if you let it be. But I I think what's been helpful, Gary's definitely helped with this a lot, is like the perspective of, you know, impressing yourself slowly. Like, if you find what you really want to do, then you have more patience when you're doing it, because you're going to do it for forever.
Mm.
So if you look at doing this podcast for forever,
Mm.
even if even if you're not going to, but if you're like, but in your head, it's like, I'm going to treat this like I'm going to do this forever because that I put the best effort into it when I do that. You know, I care the most. I do I won't just show up to get it done and check the box.
Mm.
So if you have that idea there, then it's like, well, in 4 or 5 years, there's a lot that could change,
Mm.
you know? And then in 4 or 5 years, if I don't want to do it anymore, I don't have to do it anymore, you know, because I've lost it or whatever. Right. But if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, you know, then you can start to say, you can start to celebrate some small wins. You can start to look on those things and be happy and be motivated by them, as well as I guess be excited about the big picture vision. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much to be grateful for. There's
Mm.
so much for. 7 billion people in the world. You know, where do you rank out of 7 billion people? If you are not worrying about what you're going to eat and drink for the day, you're pretty blessed. And that doesn't mean that life isn't hard. That doesn't mean you don't have a brother that has cancer. It doesn't mean that you're not going to lose your job tomorrow, or all these different things. But I mean, even at that, right? Like, if Matt Bruce came to you tomorrow and said, "Hey, you're not doing the podcast anymore," you know, that might suck,
Mm-hmm.
but you have options and you have freedom to go start another podcast if you really want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think being able to reflect and really ask yourself why it is, why do I want the things that I want? And like, why? Not just that I want them, but why do I want them? And how long, like, here's a really good, I've shared this story before on the podcast, but I think it's applicable in this situation. When I got on my first coaching call with L, so I'm signing up to be a brute athlete, you know, and I'm telling him my goals, and he's like, "Is it okay with you?" It's a great question. Is it okay with you if the goals that you're stating don't happen for at least 5 years? And man, that took me aback, because it's what you're saying. It's like, if this is something that you love, that you really love and enjoy, and you love the process, not just like, yeah, I got the Instagram thing, or yeah, I got the competing thing, or yeah, no, but I love, like, for me, working out in my dungeon, and that's what we call it, right? I don't, like, I compete simply because I love training so much.
Right.
I love training so much. I love like the feeling of it's not necessarily suffering. It's like I love the feeling of I know this is producing something in me that is making me a fierce person. It's making me an unstoppable person. Maybe physically, but certainly mentally.
Right.
And that's kind of what I hear, when you talk about like if you really love it and you really reflect and you really have gratitude towards being able just to do something every day. And that to me is, to use a Tom Brady quote, the sustainable part of talent is hard work. The sustainable part of potential is hard work.
Yeah, it's always, that's always something you can't control, right? But also it's why he says sustainable, right? Like, what is sustainable hard work for you? So everybody can resonate with CrossFit, you know. If I want to be physically fit, health and wellness is important to me for the rest of my life. If that is something I value for the rest of my life, if I can understand that, which if I don't understand that, then you go back to like, okay, whose fault is that? Is that the coach's fault? You know, and not even anyone's fault. Like, what's our responsibility to help that person to understand, right? If I want to do this for the rest of my life, then I don't care if I RX the workout today, because RX workout today doesn't matter. What matters is that when I'm 45 and I have one kid or two kids or no kids, I'm able to move the way I want to move and do the things that I want to do with the people I love. And that's what matters most, because we aren't going to be able to CrossFit at the same intensity for forever, or eat or whatever it might be. And so it's that self-awareness of like, hey, I tried to get in and compete. I gave it everything I had. Everything I felt that I could do. I sacrificed everything I felt that I could sacrifice. Honestly, even to the point of my marriage, I didn't know at the point, but I was trying to be competitive, right? You know how much time it takes outside of the gym to stay in a competitive style of training and to do all that volume. I was in pain. I didn't realize how unhappy I was until I was in pain. I was unhappy because of the pain I was in. I was unhappy because every decision that I had to make was based off the limited resources of like, will I be able to train tomorrow and be in less pain or more pain? And so I found that didn't work for me, and being self-aware there is like, okay, well, now what? And that was when things started the idea of the Iron Games really started to go forward and move forward was, how am I going to be involved in this thing that I love for the rest of my life?
Man, you are a pro at podcasting, because this was just a fantastic segue.
I didn't know.
Yeah, no, it is. I want to touch on the pain thing though. When you said you're in pain, you're talking like physical, like knees hurt, back hurt.
Pain, right? Like, I go up to see my family for the weekend. I don't play with my nieces and nephews because it hurts to do it. It hurts to go outside and to bend down and to do these different things. And I'm worried if I go, do these activities with them that I might have a sore back the next day or whatever it might be. So, yeah. And that's also where I started doing the one-on-one with Elle, where it's like, hey, I do way less volume. I do way less intensity. And yeah, there's some numbers that aren't the same, but I feel way better. I enjoy my whole life. Him and I have plans when I am going to travel weekends back. And that's a big thing for me, is the sitting in the car, always does things to my back for, if I sit for a long time. So, anyways, yeah, it's, that pain I didn't know at the time, but it was, affecting the rest of my life in a negative way, even though I loved training on my own. And so, yeah, reflecting on that and understanding, okay, this is a thing that I need in my life. I want it in my life. I love interacting with brute strength. I love going to the brute camp. I love going to the CrossFit Games, staying in the airport overnight. So I was able to go to the CrossFit Games, and part of how I got the relationship with Brute and those guys was I just showed up at the games, and I had messaged all of them like, "Hey, do you guys need help with anything?" And no one had responded. No one. But I still showed up and went to the games, and then I was able to get into the Coliseum with with one of the special wristbands, an extra one that they had, right? And so that's kind of, I don't know why I just started to bring that up, and now I've forgotten. But that was part of, for me, uh, how I've operated is pushing myself to interact with people who I judge would not, I would not be worth their time, right? And then I overcome that to interact with them, build a relationship, and then that gives me tons of confidence because I previously thought that person was untouchable. Anyway, so I'm not sure how we got into there, but that is one thing I love about the Iron Games. That's one thing I love about the CrossFit community is being able to interact with people that you think are like pretty cool for a variety of reasons, and they bring a lot to the space, competition wise, an athlete, volunteer, whatever it might be, and them choosing to interact with you and give you their time is always a rewarding thing.
I think you're so right. I think that in this space, one of the reasons I love this space as dearly as I do, obviously I love the sport, but I love that in this sport, people, it's very unlike other sports. Everyone is touchable, if that's the word we want to use. Like it's especially now with Instagram. Like they're literally a DM away. Literally. I mean,
that's what I think is super exciting is I look at it like we are 10 years in. And any other sport that was 10 years in, or any other event that was 10 years in, and then now has been going for 20, 30, 40, 50. I mean, that has only continued to grow. The spectatorship, the viewership, the community, and we are in a really cool time where it's kind of cool and popular, but it's still so small, right? CrossFit, so small. And so there is a lot of opportunity to interact with people and for there to be that still natural backyard barbecue. And I think that is part of, too, what I think brings the Iron Games some value, or what the Iron Games brings that is valuable, is this interaction of some higher level and then your everyday love for fitness coming together. And we're early enough where you can do that and it's meaningful.
So you mentioned at the top that the Iron Games was really, as you've reflected, at least it's a reflection of some of the childhood moments that you had, some of the endearing feelings of togetherness, of community, of all these things, right? That you said you felt like you experienced as a kid when folks would come over to your parents' house and there was this huge field and it was basically like a glorified party, glorified backyard barbecue.
Yeah. 2 acres, flower gardens, lots of grass everywhere. Backyard, you can play like the full-on baseball game. We would play football games back there. Yeah, so tons of space.
Wow, that's insane. And then the Iron Games is born out of that, is born out of a desire to further that into the space of fitness.
That at the time, right? The Iron Games, I mean, just came from a place of I'd gone to regionals as an alternate on a team, but just going and watching and going to the CrossFit Games and watching, going as an assistant coach with Brew, going to FitCon, going to all of these things. These were, for me, again, self-awareness. I am like figuring out that I'm this person that goes to these events and just gains tons of energy, momentum. It's kind of it's just the thing that fuels me up. And so I wanted to bring that here. We had been running events for, charity stuff at the gym. They were great experiences. We had talked in our gym. We wanted to become a Brute online, and we wanted to be an Invictus of having multiple locations. I didn't own the gym, so ultimately, like the direction of all that wasn't up to me. And there's a lot of other aspects that come into the gym and doing that. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's things even with CrossFit where like they won't hold L1 courses at your place if you're not so close within a major airport, right? So there were things like that where when the idea of the Iron Games was coming up of like, hey, like we love our community here, we love CrossFit. How do we bring these experiences that we're having when we go outside of Cedar City to Cedar City and change the lives of everybody here? And so there were a lot of naysaying in regards to, hey, there's no major airport. People have got to come 2.5 hours from Vegas or 3 hours from Salt Lake. All these different reasons as why not to do it. But ultimately, it was about, I knew we had the facilities to provide an elite experience for any athlete. And I maybe for me, someone that didn't make it in the competition space where he was able to actually compete on the regional floor or actually compete at the CrossFit Games. Maybe for me, this was like, I'm going to bring it here, like I'm just going to do that here instead.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the venues, I knew we had that. I knew in Cedar City and with the Summer Games, we had an organization and a community that would be supportive. Now, it's a lot easier to be supportive of a soccer tournament, because what that speaks everybody's language. So there's been a challenge with the CrossFit aspect, but people have been really supportive. People are taking notice, and but yeah, it all came from a place of like, I think that we can put an elite level athlete on these venues or in our space, and they can have an incredible experience that would prepare them for regionals, prepare them for the CrossFit Games. The things that they'll get here, they wouldn't get a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm.
But also the 5 to 7 day CrossFit athlete 1 hour a week could have that same experience. And that was really passionate to me. That was something I was really passionate about because, I think that the whole ecosystem needs it, right? If we don't support other competitions, then those athletes who took that step to be in that competition for the first time outside of their CrossFit gym, if we don't support them, then why would they eventually come to ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't support if the gyms don't have these benchmarks that their athletes want to try and go and accomplish or achieve, or these experiences that they want to have, then why do they keep going to the gym? And so I think the whole ecosystem is super valuable and so young, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
in states, right? At what point does CrossFit become a recreational sport, right? Like people play volleyball, basketball every week, throughout the whole year as an adult. And I think I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it, of where there's a lot of adults that don't find something after team sports or even after individual sports through high school or through college. And I think that at the lowest level, this is a recreational thing that you can do for the rest of your life. And you can have these little cool experiences at your box or at such and such a competition or at a big stage at Wadapalooza doing the online qualifier. Or you can be at the highest level of competing and being a professional. And if we understand that there's a professional level of this sport that we're always looking at too, then it's like we can feel a lot better about all the other things that we're doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like even in terms of not RXing or not being able to do X, Y, and Z that so-and-so can do. And then remembering like, okay, this is a professional sport. Like me being upset that I can't RX this workout from Wadapalooza that's now being programmed in the gym this week is like me being upset that I can't hang with LeBron James playing basketball. Like it's a totally different ballgame. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
From personal experience, I can tell you the Bayside Chipper sucks ass.
But that's what I love about that is what I love about the Iron Games and about competition too, is right. For me is every level, every person is trying to professionally PR that time, that lift, that thing, that experience. And I think there's just as much coolness in the mom with 4 kids
Mm.
that does than there is with the woman with no kids. And again, neither is right or wrong.
Hmm. So um, let's see. So the competition is held once a year in Utah, correct? Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So Iron Games is held once a year in Utah. This year it is October 13th through the 15th. Uh, it's called the Diamond Z Arena in Cedar City.
Oh wow, y'all are in an arena, so this is legit.
Well, yeah.
Well, I
So
mean, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I mean,
okay,
I'm just on this podcast,
first year we had about 6 different locations, 6 different venues. We did an event on Main Street. We closed down Main Street, did an event there. We did an event on the college campus running a 5K. The event on Main Street was a clean and jerk ladder. Um, and then we also did an assault bike snatch workout. We did workouts on the football field as well, and we did a swimming pool workout. We have an Olympic-sized swimming pool here in Cedar.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, pretty cool. So that was really cool. This last year, we did one event that was an open water run swim, and at a lake here, and then the rest of the events were held at the Diamond Z Arena, which is a like a equestrian arena, a horse arena, right? So Bishop Barbell, our equipment sponsor, that's now going to be doing some stuff with Brute at the headquarters in Florida in terms of providing equipment for them and doing a cool rig setup. I think they're doing like a 15-foot rig or something. But Bishop Barbell, they're out of Idaho, and they came on as our equipment sponsor this last year, and they outfitted the whole floor. So we
Cool.
them and put that all down. And so I've assumed you've seen more footage of of the fittest experience.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so kind of some similarities there, but yeah, we got the whole floor covered. And so that was cool. That was a great experience. And this year we'll do the same thing. And yeah, really excited about it.
How many people do you guys have compete typically?
So this last year, we had, I think, 235 athletes show up to compete. We had 279 showed up, so we sold out. We had 279 spots, and we sold out. We had about 90% of them filled in 2 weeks with registration opening up.
Mm.
But yeah, only about 235 showed up. So we've gone from the first year of 110 athletes that signed up to that. And what's been really fun or cool too is also just like the athlete numbers aren't necessarily our metric that we're going for. I mean, Wadapalooza has 3,000, but 5 different stages. That's a whole other ball game. So I'm excited. We're not trying to grow in terms of athlete numbers this year. Trying to grow in some other ways, and really excited about that.
Mm. I gotcha. Okay. Man, that's crazy. And you guys have like scaled, intermediate, RX, elite, or how's it work?
So individuals are elite, RX, and intermediate, and then right now our teams are an RX and a scaled.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, it's RX and intermediate is what the teams are called. I think that the RX team, whether it's this year, just kind of moves more to an elite. And I say that with like what happened at Wadapalooza this last year with teams of 3 there, which I thought was cool and was not gratifying, which was cool for us because when Wadapalooza went away from the teams of 3, there was that whole discussion for us if we would continue doing it. And so I'm glad that we have. Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. But I want that team of 3 RX to start to be a little bit more elite, I guess, in regards to being something that we could get some bigger athletes to come and compete in that division specifically. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is my intermediate individuals and my intermediate teams. I always want to have a low buy-in.
Yeah.
And I mean by that is like we're not going to do ring rows. There's things that if you put in it changes a lot of the logistics and the resources and what your work is behind the scenes. But I want the competition to allow this person that's starting to, I guess, RX most of the movements in a gym, that they could, this could be their first competition outside of their local gym throwdown to do. That's really important to me.
Yeah. I mean, it is, man. I mean, it's like for the everyday CrossFitter, it's really just about doing something that's like almost showing off. Like, it's like a talent show is how I look at it. It's like, hey, I've worked my ass off. Like, I want to go out here and throw down with my friends. It's not about getting on a podium. It's about, hey, me and my homies have a team of 3, and we're going to go out here and we're going to have the best time ever. Which I think is cool. Are you guys, or do you guys, I should say, do you guys actively recruit, these elite level athletes? Because look, whether you like it or not, it's, if you're advertising that, I don't know, Dallin Pepper is going to be there, people want to go have their shot at him. Now they have probably no chance, but CrossFitters are, well,
Yeah. So
always willing to go at it.
Okay, so are we reaching out and like really trying to talk athletes into coming into the event, like the bigger elite athletes? No, not like on a consistent basis. Like, okay, so for example, with Dallin Pepper, right? Him and James Sprague and
Ethan.
And Ethan, they signed up for a team of 3 2 years ago, year 2. It's super cool to have them. That was awesome. I think there's 2 sides to it. I mean, we definitely tried to, I guess let people know that they were coming. We were excited that they were coming, but there was no special treatment, I don't think.
No, I'm not saying you were like, hey, Dallin, what workout do you want? I'm just saying, are you trying to reach out to these people? Because I know a lot of competitions do. I'll give a quick example: Pensacola Beach Brawl. Right? It's like, it's cool that whatever these regional sanctional level, semifinal level athletes are there in the elite division every year, and that's part of the allure for whatever you want to call it, the everyday CrossFitter or the semi-competitive CrossFitter, to go test their fitness against these people. So that's why. That was the impetus of my question.
Absolutely. So I think that's definitely there. I have some athletes that I would like to, that I'm like trying to target and get involved and come out this year. What I think has been, I think there's pros and cons to everything. Could we maybe highlight more some of the athletes that have been to our event? Absolutely. I am pretty proud of, though, that in general, I think the people that have just been signing up and been coming, naturally the community has been excited about that, or like interacting with those people. So a good example would be Kyra Milligan came out. She's been to the MAC Championship. She came last year, and I'd never met her before. I interacted with her a little bit over the phone before the event, but it was very clear to see that she has, either she had a following or she quickly got one at the Iron Games that weekend, just because of the type of person she was. She was always smiling. She was always happy. She was willing to say hi and hug and interact with anyone. And even in that sense, I'm like, she's kind of become a celebrity, I think, in our community, or like in the Utah area. That's just because of who she is as a person.
Right. Yeah.
And it's really cool to then have your event be, benefit from that. And I'm thankful to her from that, because there's so many people I run into or that I see interacting with her online that she obviously is helping build our community, and I haven't even asked. So that's pretty cool. I think that there's been a lot of, I guess, natural way that that's been done, and I'm proud of that, because we've sold out, in terms of the event or the athlete numbers that we have. So now it's growing and building in some other ways to bring more value to everybody that's involved.
Mm. When does registration open this year?
So planning on end of March, early April. So trying to wait until after quarterfinals if we can to like because we would like to try and attract some bigger athletes that might barely miss out on the semifinal, or that will just the athletes will know more about what their season looks like, after that time frame. So trying to wait a little bit until there. Also, we've always tried to give our community a heads up. That's been involved before. To get signed up since there's no qualifier currently.
Mm. Are you gonna? I'm assuming the qualifier would be the next thing you would add.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know, but it is definitely on the table and an option at some point for sure. Right? There's a progression there. I Yeah, I think that we would do one at some point, but yeah, as of right now, we're having conversations about it and just how we would deploy that. Have that come out when the time is right.
All right. So Iron Games is in October this year. People can get signed up around after quarters. We'll just say
Yeah,
that.
end of March, start of April. Yeah, well, Instagram's the best place to stay, in the loop on everything that's going on. And yeah, we'll definitely be letting everybody know on there when sign up time comes.
Cool, man. Dude, this has been a absolute pleasure.
Hey, you.
I know we've texted a bunch, so it's good to finally get to connect on a more personable basis.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You too, man. I really appreciate the conversation with you. You taking an interest in things I try to bring to the table other than the Iron Game. So thank you for that. That means a lot. And love to, yeah, if we want to get back on another one later on after registration or just anything, like I can get on anytime you want.
I appreciate that. Is there anything that you want to add before we jump off?
Uh, I just wanted to say thanks. I want to say thanks to you, to everyone, everyone in the community. I mean, Brute's been a part of it from the beginning in regards to giving me a fake boost confidence shot. Not fake, but just
I get it.
an actual like getting in the space and getting to know people and people like Nick Fowler,
For sure.
Mike, Adrian Conway, all there's been a lot of progression and growth,
Mm.
since the guys were originally with Brute and started that, Matt Bruce, and but everyone has just been in some way, shape, or form, supportive or a cheerleader. And just thank you to everyone at Brute, in the CrossFit community, in the Iron Games community, the volunteers, the staff, the summer games, SUU. Like for me, I have this last year figured out that this was the thing that I have let most control my life and turn it upside down, and in good and bad ways. And so
Mm.
that lets me know that this is the thing that, I want to do for forever. And if I don't do it for forever and change my mind, that's okay too. But that's the mindset that I want to have right now because that's how I feel about it. And I feel really lucky to have found something that people value that I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mm.
So thanks.
It's a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
When the thing that you deem the most valuable, people derive value from.
Yeah. And the opportunity, you just can't do it with anyone. For me, that's where the gratitude and some humbleness definitely comes in, is like every single moving part that goes into putting on an event like this is valuable, and I can't do it on my own. And so thank you.
Mm. I love it, man. Well, thank you again for your time, man. This was a real joy. I enjoyed the conversation from start to finish.
You need anything, you let me know, man.
All right, brother. Be good. We'll see you.